Cool. So we've got an exciting video today. We're going to talk about orthorexia.
That's right. That's right. So why don't you first, my understanding of this is it's kind of like, I don't know, food addiction kind of related. So can you define for us what is orthorexia?
Yeah, so let's start by reading this article that one of my friends posted, and we can link it down in the description box below.
Okay.
But what it says is orthorexia nervosa, the health food eating disorder, gets its name from the Greek word ortho, meaning straight, proper, or correct. This exaggerated focus on food can be seen today in some people who follow lifestyle movements such as raw, clean, and paleo. American doctor Stephen Bratman coined the term orthorexia nervosa in 1997, sometime after his experience in a commune in upstate New York. It is there he developed an unhealthy obsession with eating proper food. All I could think about was food. But even when I became aware that my scrambling in the dirt after raw vegetables and wild plants had become an obsession, I found it terribly difficult to free myself. I had been seduced by righteous eating. Bratman's description draws parallels with many modern dietary fads that promise superior health by restricting whole food groups without a medical reason or even a valid scientific explanation. Raw food followers might meet regularly to align their bodies, minds, and souls by feasting on cleansing and immune-boosting raw foods. Such foods are never heated above 44 degrees Celsius, so all the living enzymes in the food remain intact. No gluten, no dairy, no sugar is allowed. Clean eaters may follow similar regimes by removing gluten, dairy, and even meat from their diets. You might overhear a discussion about superfood green smoothie recipes after a yoga class that also happen to cleanse your gallbladder.
What the hell?
Well, it goes on. We got to finish it. And finally, around the corner, paleo pushers may beef up together with a CrossFit class followed by a few steaks. Again, with paleo, there is no gluten, or any grains for that matter, and no dairy or other such toxins are allowed. How common is orthorexia? There is a blurry line separating normal healthy eating and orthorexia, but one way to define the condition is when eating healthily causes significant distress or negative consequences in a person's life.
That's extremely vague.
Yeah, right? And they have a test. This is going to be hilarious. I'll go through it. I'll walk through my answers. They may be plunged into gloom by eating a piece of bread, become anxious about when their next kale, chia, or quinoa hit is coming, or eat only at home where superfood intake can be tightly controlled. What's a superfood? Such behaviors can have a significant impact on relationships with family members and friends, let alone on their mental health. Orthorexia nervosa.
I think it's nervosa.
Nervosa. Thank you. Is not a clinically recognized eating disorder, but researchers have developed and tested questionnaires on various populations to get an idea of its prevalence. So they developed this questionnaire, and what they found was a prevalence of 57.6% with the female-male ratio of 2 to 1. However, using a value of 35, the prevalence is reduced to 21%. Most studies have been conducted in population subgroups that may be at increased risk for orthorexia, such as health professionals, again using the Ortho 15 and a cutoff of 40. Prevalence of orthorexia among Turkish medical doctors was 45.5%.
What?
Yeah.
45% of Turkish doctors have this?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Come on.
56.4% of Turkish artists, and 86% of Ashtanga yoga teachers in Spain. Okay, so I took this test that they linked to here, and I'm going to click on that right now.
What is it? What is the source of all this? What's the site? Who's?
Well, we'll post it below, but it's iflscience.com.
Okay. Now, I will say, I think, it sounds like there's some relevant points there in terms, people can become obsessed with diets, whether they're vegan, paleo, raw fooders, whatever. So I do think it's possible, and I know some people can become miserable obsessing over food. But this sounds like they're trying to categorize anything other than sad as orthorexic.
I agree, and I think we'll discover that a little bit too here. So here's their test, right? They ask you a bunch of questions, and if you answered yes to 4 or 5 of the questions above, it means it's time to relax more about food. So let's see what my score is here. Do you spend more than 3 hours a day thinking about your diet? It's quite possible. I do sell fresh fruits and veggies for a living, so my job is to talk to people about food, and sometimes I talk about how I eat.
Yeah, and what if you're a dietitian? What if you're promoting these things because you feel they're good for the environment? I mean, does that mean you're orthorexic because you're spending part of your day promoting these things? Nonsense.
Yeah. So I didn't really get that one either, but we both scored 1 on that, right?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Do you plan your meals several days ahead?
No.
I got to be a yes on that one.
I think I should, but I don't really.
Well, I do because I need it to ripen. So I
if you're going to be raw, you're going to have some kind of you're going to.
Totally. So I've got 2. You're at 1. And that's because you think you're too lazy.
Yes.
The third one is the nutritional value of your meal more important than the pleasure of eating it?
No.
I don't really understand this question because I feel that if it has good nutritional value, it should also be very pleasurable.
Well, yeah, this is a bit confusing because we do have foods that, tiramisu could be very tasty, but you really shouldn't be eating it. So yeah, that's kind of a trick question. And like what you're alluding to is not everyone really knows what is healthy. So yeah, that's hard to answer, I think.
Yeah. I'm gonna say no. Yeah, I'd probably be a no because
Well, you know how I would answer that, Ben? I would say my knowledge has accrued over time, which has dictated how my diet has evolved. So even though now I'm not specifically thinking a lot about the nutritional content of each meal, my overall impetus has been to improve my diet nutritionally. So I don't know. I don't think I can answer this question.
Okay, we'll have to skip to the next one. Has the quality of your life decreased as the quality of your diet has increased?
No, I think the quality of my life from the way I perceive it has improved. I don't know if outside observers would agree with that, but I think it's improved.
I think so too. I'm going to answer no to that one as well. Have you become stricter with yourself lately?
That's funny because once you establish a healthy pattern, does it require you to be strict with yourself to adhere to it? So like for you, eating brown rice sucks, so you don't eat it. Does that mean you're being strict with yourself? I mean, I don't think so. No.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But although I do sometimes have to be strict with myself about how much avocado I'm going to eat.
Okay.
Which as far as I'm concerned is based on sound scientific principle. But so I don't know, maybe not lately. It's hard to say. I guess.
Yeah, I would say it's only required if I'm eating food that's unhealthy.
Yeah. Okay, next one. So we'll cancel that one out. We just want to answer it.
All right.
Does your self-esteem get a boost from eating healthfully?
Not any. I mean, I probably have gone through phases earlier in my life where I would feel a bit bummed out if I hadn't eaten the way I felt I was supposed to. But now I'm pretty much screw it. If I decide to eat something that's unhealthy, I just accept the consequences for it. I don't dwell on it. But I know what's healthy and what's not healthy. I mean,
Well, when I eat healthy, I feel really good. I start feeling better about myself. So I'm going to say yes. I do get a self-esteem boost from eating really good quality food.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because, I mean, you're physiologically feeling better if you eat healthy. So, of course, you're going to feel better, you know?
Mm-hmm. So what, I've got 3, you've got 2 so far?
I guess. I don't know.
The next question is, have you given up foods you used to enjoy in order to eat the right foods?
Absolutely.
Yep, I'm going to say yes to that one too. Steak was tasty, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I haven't had steak in a hell of a long time, but ice cream, ice cream?
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Does your diet make it difficult for you to eat out, distancing you and your family from friends?
Well, I would say most of my friends now are vegans. Actually, I mean, I'm still willing to hang out with other people, but there's not a lot of common ground. So at least in terms of food, I don't know. I don't. It's not like I've got tons of friends I'm hanging out with all the time. I have too many things to do. I don't know.
I think it does for me, unless there's like a salad bar available. And sometimes there is, but actually in San Francisco there aren't many salad bars. So it can make it a little bit difficult to eat out. But whether that distances me from family and friends, not so much.
Yeah, I would say that's got to be tougher for a raw person. For me, I can get a baked potato or pasta, and that'll kind of work. So, but I hear you. Yeah.
So I'm at 5. You're at 3. Do you feel guilty when you stray from your diet?
No, but I don't stray very far anymore. So.
Well, we were talking about that one instance where he did end up eating a cheese pizza.
Yes.
There's more context there.
Yes.
Any guilt involved?
No, actually, I think I handled that well. I would like to hear other viewers' response to that. The story is that I was in a public setting with family, and I actually had been drinking a little wine that night. So when I ordered my pizza, I forgot to say no cheese. So it came with the cheese, and I could have sent it back, I guess, but I didn't want to waste it, and I didn't want to disrupt the dinner, so I went ahead and ate it. That's the first time I've had cheese since I've been vegan, knowingly, and I didn't feel it didn't bother me that much, except for the fact that I strongly promote vegan principles, and in a way I violated something that I highly promote. So there's a little bit of hypocrisy there, but other than that, it didn't bother me that much.
The issue is kind of like one of waste too. Like the deed has already been done, right?
Right. I mean, it reminds me of like with something like that. I sometimes think these arguments can be straining gnats while camels walk through. It's like Dr. McDougall going to Christmas dinner and having turkey one time a year. This is not significant when we're talking about moving the broader society from eating meat 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. If Dr. McDougall has turkey once, so I'm not advocating eating animal products, and these are special situations where you might have them. So I didn't feel I didn't feel guilt about it. Just a little bit like I was compromising my principles, you know.
Yeah, in fact, what I tell people starting out on a raw food diet is the only way you're going to succeed is to get all the guilt out of food. So, for example, I have the ability to go eat a steak and to not feel guilty about it. I really think that's where people need to be in order to like succeed on like a really unusual diet for today's society.
You say that? That's your point. Why do you say that? I don't know if I agree with that.
Because it has to come from a place of self-love to eat a certain way, especially like a really clean way, so to speak. And self-love is all about, or guilt is more about putting yourself down. All of the people I know who eat raw foods exclusively, guilt is not part of the equation.
Okay.
I don't want to deal with the consequences of eating the brown rice or the chicken or the steak or whatever, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, in a way, guilt itself is kind of a worthless emotion or feeling. It doesn't really accomplish anything unless it makes you reform or change something. You know. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So those are my thoughts on it, but I was a no for that one. And the last question. Do you feel at peace with yourself and in total control when you eat healthfully?
Yeah.
I think so too, yeah.
But I think I feel pretty much at peace with myself and in total control when I intentionally decide to eat something that's unhealthy. So, I mean, if I decide to drink a glass of wine, I'm very much at peace.
Uh-huh. All right on. So I scored 6. You're around to 4. So we're both orthorexics, and we need to chill out.
Okay. Well, c'est la vie.
Yeah. So I've got want to share my thoughts on the greater overall picture here.
Okay.
So I'm a raw foodist. I only eat fruits and veggies, raw foods. And so there's this dialogue of orthorexia, and I've heard some crazy stories too, where people they made the conclusion that seal liver is the only healthy food, and then they eventually go around this circle, and then they land on it has to be kale, and then they eat only the best organic kale, and then they fall off, and then they're like, I was just crazy orthorexic, and we should eat everything and moderation and all things. So I think there are some people who have unhealthy relationships with themselves, and it manifests in unhealthy relationships with food. But I think at the end of the day, there are only people who are operating under sound nutritional principles and people who aren't, right? So a girl who's just trying to survive on carrots, not a sound nutritional principle. If you cook them, maybe you can get enough calories. I don't know. If you juice them, you can. But probably not.
You start turning orange, though, man.
You do. I heard that. But let me talk about my dietary history. So, 8th grade, I was trying to be the best runner in the world. Sounds pretty corny, but that's what I was after. And I was running really aggressively, working out really hard. And I was also eating all the time, all these fatty foods, salami, potato chips, soy ice cream, rice bread, Cliff Bars, salad mix with olive oil and kidney beans and all these fatty foods. And I was starting to put on so much weight as the stress accrued, and all the, fatty foods were just causing tremendous weight gain. And, I was looking at the best runners in the world, and I'm like, these guys don't look like me. They're all trim, tall, thin. And the way I tried to solve it was by eating less. So I became pretty anorexic. I had pretty bad runner's anorexia. I went from 140 pounds to 115, right?
Whoa.
And
how tall are you, Ben?
5'9".
Okay.
But I'm 150 now.
Okay. Are you really?
I am, yeah. And it's not because I necessarily have a lot of body fat. I think it just has to do with like bone mass or bone density or something like that. Because I have a friend who's 6'5" and he weighs a little bit less than me. So
Yeah, I'm 5'11" and I'm like 145.
yeah, I don't know what it is exactly. I might have a little bit of extra muscle on me. I don't know. But I've always kind of weighed a little bit more for my body height. But anyway, so at some point I realized that not eating wasn't working. My energy was low. I wasn't performing well. And so I started eating whatever to put back on the weight. I was eating a lot of ice cream, even though I was lactose intolerant and knew it. Just eating.
Hey, let me ask you. When you got thin, did you have people saying, "Ben, you're getting so thin. You need to eat more"? Did you have people telling you that?
No, in fact, I had kind of people telling me the opposite. I was in a yoga camp that summer, and they were all about eating in moderation and not eating too much. And I was like, why is it always about food? But anyway, so at one point I realized it stopped working. I was getting pretty sickly, and I started eating crap again. Felt like crap again. But then when it came time to figure out what to eat, I was like, okay, so starving yourself doesn't work. So do some foods work better than others, right? And I noticed in particular getting rid of dairy and gluten in my diet worked better than eating those foods. So I started fueling on different foods. I tried to give up the refined sugars, tried to eat less processed meat, for example. And eventually I got to like a sugar-free, dairy-free, gluten-free diet in high school. And, for most people that's like intense. But, the salads in my lunch were spring mix with cold cuts and olive oil dressing, which is still like a far cry from any kind of nutritionally sound principle. And then when I got to college, I did gluten-free vegan, And I remember like the first day I was going into my coach's office to tell him that, and he's like, "Why are you doing that?" I'm like, "Well, brown rice works better than chicken breast, so that's what I did." And I think a lot of people who experience anorexia are really just looking for something that really works, and they just don't know what that is. And
I don't know, Ben. I think anorexia is pretty complicated. I think there's a lot of body image, and I think there's also some cultural pressure for especially women in terms of anorexia. But go ahead.
Totally, they want to look lean, fit, healthy, and they don't know how to do it. Eating a normal amount of calories, so they start restricting calories instead.
Yeah, but there's also, I mean, in the extreme cases, there starts to be a lack of recognition of what they actually really look like. There's some kind of misperception going on.
Totally.
But on this note, before you continue, I don't know if you saw this. I saw this recently. Anorexia is like a very small percentage of eating disorders. Most eating disorders are not anorexia. But anyway, go ahead.
Interesting. So I feel like a lot of people, there's still this moderation idea, which basically means eat the standard American diet.
Right.
But I was like, okay, that didn't work. So how about I eat the things that work the best, and I eat only them. And eventually that led me to a raw food diet, over time. And, this is what people call orthorexic. And I say this is my best option because the other thing didn't work and eating less didn't work. So now I have to focus on what I'm eating and get down to the best fuel sources. So no, that's what I think about orthorexia. I think it's really a really harmful dialogue because it keeps people from experimenting with their diets in ways that work. Because as soon as somebody goes vegan or gluten-free, everybody's pointing fingers saying, you're orthorexic, shame on you.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, there's like these catch-all terms that people use to try and write you off. and it just is not borne out. So there's so much resistance to these shifts. I mean, you could say that a lot of tradition is under attack today from different angles. And it's interesting that this piece you read refers to both paleo and vegan as orthorexic. So it's like anything, and I would say in most cases paleo is better than the standard American diet. So I don't know, it's complicated.
Yeah. I guess another issue I have is at school. I actually went into the health center, and I wanted to get some blood tests. I wanted an OH25. I told them this. I wanted an OH25. I wanted a T3, T4, or TSH, and I want a UMMA urine test. And I want you to, write me a little thing, and so I can go get the blood work. Checking things that come up, and they're like, "Well, why do you want to get this?" And I said these are issues that come up for a lot of people, and I want to do it. And the concept of what I was eating came up, and I told them, I'm running 60 miles a week. I had maybe 20 bananas today, and they actually gave me this pamphlet that recommended eating animal products for B12 and vitamin D.
Is this a primary care or just some clinic you walk in?
No, this is the school's medical staff.
Okay.
And, just like all this really reductionist thinking, like, you eat this for vitamin E, you eat this for selenium, you eat this for calcium, just these crazy, just archaic, just ancient, ideas that just, it's totally nuts. And I almost thought about writing them saying, like, I highly recommend you don't pass this out because it's going to mislead a lot of people into really poor health,
It's sad. Sad.
Right? And so if these are the people who are dictating, what's a nutritionally sound diet and, what orthorexic diets look like, there's a big problem with that because a lot of people are going to get bad information and they're going to die really young of heart disease and cancer, and they're going to have all these health problems. So that's the issue I have with orthorexia. I think it's mainly to promote the standard American diet, as you said, and I dislike it a lot. It's funny though. The group I've been called orthorexic by the most is actually the cooked vegan crowd.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame. And I wasn't even like provoking them in that instance. I was like, whoa.
I don't know. I mean, I know that there's people who try to be raw and vegan who can't do it, and then they go back to eating another way, and who knows why they were unable to do it. Maybe it was something simple that could have been resolved. I don't know. But I could see how someone that happens to, we tend to look at the world through our own personal experience. Mm-hmm. And if that happens to someone, then they must think that I don't know. They must think that all vegans are deluding themselves or something. It's crazy because it seems demonstrably easily observable that many people succeed on a vegan and on a raw vegan diet. So it's weird. It's just that's what I'm trying to focus on lately is to how to get into this paleo mindset and try to communicate. It's weird.
Yeah, I think that one's really tricky too because I think that these people who do go off grains do experience benefits from doing that.
Yeah, I know that's your perspective, and I know, of course, anybody who's gluten intolerant is going to feel that way, and yet a lot of people do fine on grains. There are, so that's why I take a little bit of issue with this, calling it cooked food addiction. I just don't buy that. So I don't know. I think there may be some truth to different individuals do better on different kinds of diets. I mean, I'm generally inclined to think that we're a species, and so there must be some ideal diet for the species, and yet there's so much variability. Things like developing the genetic ability to digest milk. Like in some Northern European countries, that's in the genetic code. So there's some variability throughout, but I don't know. Yeah. I don't buy the cooked food addiction thing. I don't buy that. Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, that's reminiscent of what you're criticizing. It's like anybody who doesn't accept what you're doing calls you orthorexic. Anybody who's not doing what you do, you call cooked food addict. I mean, is that accurate or no?
Not really. I think addiction is about it's about wanting to not want what you want, if that makes sense. Wanting to not want something. There you go. And Ted Carr, if you watch his videos, did a really good video on this. I think addiction's less about doing something and more about your mind state toward what you're doing.
Okay.
That's a little tongue twister.
But you would say then that there's lots of people who are eating cooked food who are unknowingly addicted. Would that be your position?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, but I'm going to go up to those people and say, hey, guess what? You're addicted.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
Research that shows that they have opiates in them, especially grains. And I certainly experienced it as addictive.
Yeah.
And the only time I ever experienced it as addictive is when I went off cooked food. And then, I had a little bit, and I was like, oh, my God, this is making me feel terrible, but I just have to keep smashing it in my face. Kind of like a hot Cheetos kind of response. And I definitely don't get that with bananas. So,
okay.
I don't know. I mean, obviously there are some addictions that are better and worse than others, or dependencies. A grain addiction is not necessarily as bad as a steak addiction, So, whatever,
All right.
If my parents eat more grains, I'm always happy,
But I do think, I don't know if it's orthorexia or what it is, but I do think there are people who are obsessed with food, and it can be so powerful in their lives that they do separate from family. It could be similar to like a drug addiction. I think that's possible, and I don't know if you would define that as orthorexia or how you define it, but I think that is possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think it's possible, and I know I've watched little segments on the news, people talking about coming out saying that I've had a problem with food, and it's all these people who are on starvation diets, just trying to get the most wild organic strawberries.
What? And they say you're eating too much.
Something like that. Yeah, I mean, those diets, they're just not nutritionally sufficient.
Yeah.
Got to hit that caloric number, whatever it is. You've got to hit your EFAs too. You got to get the right amount of omega-6 and omega-3, and.
So you don't think breatharianism is a viable nutritional approach?
No, but I've actually had days where I don't eat for 24 hours, and I just don't get hungry.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you seen some interviews I've done with Carlo? Carlo does a little bit of what he calls intermittent fasting, and he says that a lot of these Kenyan runners do it. It's pretty interesting that one of their things for their running is they want to get their body weight low because it's less weight to carry over the long distance. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think of it as fasting when I do it. I just think of it as eating when I'm hungry. And
I like that, Ben. I like that.
Yeah, and it's first. I feel like the foods I'm eating are so nutritionally solid that they're satisfying a lot longer. And when we're talking about cooked food, and especially grains, they don't have any vitamin C. And since we don't make our own vitamin C, food should probably have vitamin C in it.
Well, you know, if a significant percentage of your diet has those foods, plus these grains that don't have vitamin C but do have a hell of a lot of carbohydrate content, I think you would have both of those things would be met. But yeah, I see your point. I mean, in terms of comprehensive phytonutrient profile, fresh raw fruits blow away anything. I agree.
Yeah. I don't know, I just feel so much more satiated on them. Like when I was eating rice and stuff, I couldn't control it, man. It was a mess at the dining hall, like all you can eat in the evening. Like 6, 7 plates of piled high with garbanzo beans and rice and potatoes. And
so what do you attribute that to? Do you think that was because you weren't getting what you really needed and that's why you just kept eating?
Totally, yeah, definitely. It took me a while too before I could eat less raw food. And some days my job is to go door to door some days for 5 hours, and some days I'll just eat 1,500 calories, and I'm okay.
Yeah, see, that's good. I like that. I mean, that sounds more normal. There's a fluctuation.
There is, yeah, absolutely. But I definitely feel satiated a lot quicker than I used to.
Well, very interesting topic, Ben. Very interesting.
For sure.
So, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next topic.
Sounds good.